Welcome to this edition of Artists of the Round Table. We're going to interview one of our main hottest teachers that we have. Her name is Karen Bagley, but she introduces a whole lot more than her hotness. And we're gonna discuss it. We're gonna see why she's one of the most talented photographers in the world right now.
My
So
goodness, are you getting paid by flattery?
we'll see what I get paid by later.
I'm married, so
Me too.
okay.
Yeah,
All
yeah.
right. Well, I'm happy you're having me. Thank you.
I will be having you. Yeah. So let us continue. Tell us a little bit about yourself, Karen.
Well, my name is Karen Bagley. I'm the owner of Significant Moments Photography, and I have been in business 9 years. I recently started selling commission work, and I also specialize in underwater portraiture as well.
Okay, let's go a little deeper. We like to go deep here.
Okay.
How did you get your start?
Oh my gosh. So I have always had a creative streak in me.
Mm-hmm.
And sorry, your eyes are just,
Mesmerizing?
yeah,
Yes.
just a little bit. Sorry about that. Let me focus. Okay, so I got my start because I have always had a creative streak in my heart, in my mind. I've always wanted to create works of art, and of course, the world tells you that photography isn't a real job. So I kind of ignored that for a while. And then I got my start because my husband was a huge support to me. He actually got me my first camera.
Sounds like a nice guy.
He is incredibly nice. He's a really good guy. And I started photographing everything. I photographed weddings, I photographed pets, I photographed engagements, everything, photographed everything. And
Why was that? Why did you feel the need to do that?
I felt the need to do that because I wasn't sure what I wanted to photograph. I didn't have an idea. And when you're starting in a creative field, I think your mind always tends to go towards, what's going to make money. I think that's what everybody thinks right out of the gate. And that was my thought for sure. So I photographed a little bit of everything. And on top of that, I was learning. So the more I could photograph, the better off I was. So anybody that would hire me off of Craigslist or, Facebook, whatever.
Aging ourselves here?
A little bit. Yeah, I'm aging myself. I'm okay with that though.
Well, you look wonderful for your age. You can't be older than at least 27.
I'm definitely older than 27.
Oh, no way.
I have 2 children. My oldest is 16, and she just turned 16 back in February.
Oh, that's not even possible.
Yes, it is
No.
definitely possible. My husband and I had her when we were really young.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's been around a while. Seems
Now I'll
like
be
you-
35 soon, so. But thank you.
I don't believe that.
Thank
but-
you. That's very nice. Thank you.
Okay, well, let's continue on. So you photographed everything, and then what developed from there? What was your plan of action? Because a lot of people don't have a plan of action in photography.
So I would fall into that category. I didn't have a plan of action. It wasn't until, because in my mind, I could make everything beautiful. And my husband said, okay, that's great. I love that you feel that you can make everything beautiful, but how are you going to make money from it? And I was like, oh, yeah, I should probably think about that.
People don't think about that.
Oh, and I just started to pay attention. I started to learn as much as I could about the photography industry, about business. Again, my husband came in extreme, I want to say clutch, came in so clutch. Does that age me too? Because I don't know what the kids say these days. But no, he just encouraged me to learn the business side. So as I was photographing everything, and every time I would do a session, I was learning. It's funny because I never really took that much time to learn about lighting or how to actually use my gear. That I kind of learned it on my own. But as I went throughout this learning process, and this was technically before I even owned my business, just selling CDs for, $50 and $75, then $100, $150, gave everybody all of the images. And then, right around that time, that's when my husband was like, okay, but if you look at the numbers here, you're not really making that much money from it. So what are you going to do? And that's where I really started to try to submerge myself as much as I could in the industry. So I went to conferences and I would support or volunteer whatever the conference was, because that gave me like one-on-one access to the speakers and teachers. But what was interesting about that was the majority of speakers and teachers then were not talking all that much about business. And really and truthfully, it hasn't changed a whole lot since I've been in the industry. The teaching side of photography is more so on how to take a pretty picture and not so much on the business side. So it took me a little bit more digging.
I've noticed that as well. Yes, it's a lot of people there are very interested in lighting and posing, which are all
Absolutely.
great. You want to take a great image, but again, if you can't sell that great image, what is the point?
Yeah.
And then they'll invest all this money in learning all these things to photograph like someone else, and then they're not their own artist anymore. So,
Nope.
how did you get yourself out of that trap there?
So I really learned more so, again, going back to my husband, and it actually started with a friend. A friend asked if I would photograph her maternity pictures. And I, of course, was like, sure, not a problem. And when that session was over, my husband was like, you kind of have a good eye for this, and I think that you should explore this. And it was so funny because it actually caused an argument between us, because I knew the photography industry from the conferences that I had been to and the assisting that I had done.
Seem like the argumentative type.
I can definitely be the argumentative type for sure. And it caused an argument between us because I just was so 100% sure. After I calmed down a little bit, after I sat back and, let the words marinate in my brain, because that's how I work, I realized that, maybe I should listen. And I put my all into running a model call, and I photographed 4 expecting moms, 4 of them. And I did everything in my power. I didn't have any money, so I couldn't really, buy these gowns back then when I was starting, gowns weren't really that
There wasn't
accessible. There wasn't really
companies like there are today.
no, there really wasn't. Maternity gowns have just exploded over the last decade.
The field has.
The gowns for sure. And but back then it was very minimal at best. And the ones that were available to me, I couldn't afford them at the time. So my mother is a seamstress. I sewed my gowns. I put them together, and I actually had my mother make one in particular that I knew I couldn't make, and she helped me. But I put everything into those sessions. So I researched, I looked for different locations, because what I saw when I looked at the maternity field altogether was that everything was the same. Every single image, every single maternity image was either photographed at the same location with every single client, or the same wardrobe, the same everything. So I worked really hard on separating myself and researching locations. And a lot of the locations that we found, it was so funny because when I actually posted them on social media, everybody was like, "Where is this? Are you in another country?" And I was like, "No, this is in Georgia." So we just put, my husband and I, we spent like the first year and a half, once my business was officially a business, an LLC, we spent most of that first year just driving around Georgia, Atlanta, everywhere that we could within, a certain radius. We weren't actually, no, we did. Well, Jekyll Island it's still in Georgia, but it was a 5-hour drive. We even drove down there. And once I did that, my business just kind of took off from there, because what was happening in the maternity field at that time wasn't, nobody else was doing it. So
How are you marketing? How are you trying to?
then I was absolutely just marketing on
I assume
Instagram.
you didn't have a studio.
Did not have a studio, not at all. Didn't even, my husband and I barely had 2 pennies to rub together, let alone investing in, a studio and all of the gear that I probably should have had, but I didn't have. So I just made it work with what I had. But what I focused on was paying more attention to my clients and making the images themselves stand out. And one of the biggest things that I noticed was, again, the wardrobes, because I was making something that was different. That was what was drawing people to me. And I was using Instagram to market myself. That was where 80% of my clients came from. And then, of course, I had my Facebook business page. So people were seeing me. It was only on social media. I had a website, but it was like one of those template sites that you set up. And so it was
Very popular.
it was not searchable on Google. So I was not getting any clients from Google. So they all came from Facebook or Instagram then.
Okay, so you started booking a couple of clients, and then What did you do from there? How'd you realize you could make money? What steps did you take?
So once I officially started my business, I started right out of the gate as an IPS photographer. So for people who don't know, IPS is in-person sales.
What made you choose to just jump right into that?
Because well, for one, that's kind of my personality. For two, I needed to make money. And from what I had heard from, the few business classes that I had taken, there wasn't a lot of information about photography business out there. There just wasn't. So the few things that I had been able to pick up was to do in-person sales sessions. So the minute that I became an LLC, that's what I started doing. I was no longer photographing and printing CDs, putting them on CDs. Nowadays, CDs aren't even a thing anymore, so it's not even called shoot and burn anymore. It's just shoot and send. People just send them in a gallery and they download them. But I came up with a pricing list, and I had just 3 packages, and my first sale ever was $2,400.
Oh, that's a big jump there.
It was huge. It was the most money that I had seen at one time. That I remember I called my mother, and I told her, and I was like in tears. So it was a really amazing. It was an amazing experience for me. And then what was funny was that was actually not in the maternity field at all. It was a high school senior boy, which was funny. It was just word of mouth that this client came to me, and yeah, after that sale though, I was like, I can do this with maternity. I know that I can. And sure enough, that's what I photographed ever since then. I had a couple of seniors that would come to me every now and again. And there was a period of time where I looked into photographing seniors as well.
Yes.
But my schedule became so hectic with photographing maternity clientele that I couldn't fit in seniors. I couldn't fit in marketing time. I couldn't fit in just in my schedule with photographing. And at this point in time, I had also invested in off-camera flash so that I wasn't restricted at just photographing at the golden hour of the day or super early in the morning or, whatever the case was.
You didn't have a studio, so.
Didn't have a studio, so I was always photographing on location. And this was before I had any assistants or anything like that. So it was just me on my own. My husband was working his job, which again wasn't pulling in a ton of income. He worked for his family. It worked, when we were young and first married. We were 18. It was a good salary for then, but as we got older, it wasn't a good salary. So I was working by myself, and I needed off-camera flash that I was able to manage on my own. So it was very simple. It was just my Canon speed lights that I began to use, and that further added to me being able to offer something different to the world out there, because there was, again, at the time, everybody was using natural light. And again, I think that's just because a lot of people who are photographers, and this is in no way to disrespect them, but they are either doing it as what's now called a side hustle or maybe just an extra form of income, whereas I was looking to make it my full-time career. And that
It's difficult, yes.
Yeah, it's extremely difficult. I think people don't understand just how difficult it is in any creative field to work full-time. And not only to work full-time, but to be able to actually become a professional in whatever field it may be, because the true definition of a professional is, if you've ever looked it up in the dictionary,
I may have heard it somewhere, I don't know.
I think you might have. But the actual definition of a professional is someone who can support themselves solely on that wage, which means if I could support my entire family on that wage that I was making from photography, that is when I could call myself a true professional.
Wisdom, yeah.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
So, and I did. I finally did that. I was able to support my entire family. My husband was able to leave his job that he was miserable with.
So would you say people they're paying their $299 and getting a certificate every year that says they're a professional photographer? Does that mean anything to anybody?
So I think, I think people who are going to these conferences or taking these online tests to get their certification to be a professional photographer, I don't think it's bad. It shows that they want to actually, learn the field and have a title to go along with that. But do I think that's enough? No, I don't. In this day and age, especially, I mean, we've heard the term, saturated. The field is saturated. There's so many, people are competing against. It's just the information and the learning should never stop. One test should not be what makes you a certified professional photographer. It should be an ongoing continuation. And, there is going to come a point where there isn't a platform or anything that they can necessarily give you any information to make you a better artist or a better business owner. But yeah, I think it should be a school. I think it should be which, that's exactly what you have done, is created a school for photographers to not only get their certification in photography, but in the business field, which isn't anywhere else. That's just that's not found, which is why I love it so much.
Well, we're glad to have you a part of the team here, Karen.
Yeah, I'm excited to be part of the
See
team.
what kind of knowledge you can share with the rest of us, and hopefully we all learn and grow from what you have to offer.
Yeah, well, I hope so too. I'm pretty straightforward and I love what I do, and I will defend and stand up for creatives everywhere because well, you were talking about the certification and, these conferences. Over the last few years, what I've noticed is that these conferences are almost creating a competition between artists instead of helping them know how to be a better business owner. And that kind of makes my heart a little sad because we shouldn't be competing against each other as photographers. We should not be taking classes to learn how to photograph. We shouldn't only be taking classes to learn how to photograph from, some professional that's been in the field for 10, 15, 20 years. We should be focused on today. We should be focused on how our actual gear works. We should understand how lighting works, whether it's constant, ambient, sunlight, whatever it is, off-camera flash. We need to understand those things inside and out, because then we are no longer competing with the photographer and the artist next to us. We are able to focus on who we are as an artist inside. And to me, that is the most important thing that a photographer or any artist could do.
So you would say learning to have your own style is very important, and the only way you could do that is if you actually understand photography inside and out, instead of just taking a class and seeing how this person does a shot, and then you're going to go home and do the exact same shot.
Yeah.
Is that?
Or they'll maybe make like a tweak, maybe. But yeah, over the last, I shouldn't say that because, like I said, from the very beginning, portraiture there will always be trends that come and go. Always. That's never going to change. However, what I have noticed in my almost a decade of being in the industry is the people that tend to follow the trends are not in business for very long. And I started to ask myself, this was years ago, I asked myself, why is this? Why am I seeing these people fall? Why are their businesses not succeeding? And then I, was adding two and two together, and I realized they never really were able to express themselves as the artist. They were chasing money. That's what I like to call it. And again, that's not to hurt anybody because we need money. We have to have money to live. That's how the world works. But
you have to pay our bills.
We have to pay our bills. Yeah, we have to put food on the table. And I think that fear of getting that income is what controls people a lot of the time. So when they see something that maybe goes viral, or with all of the platforms of social media that are available to us today, it's so easy to see something and be like, oh my God, I love that. I want to look, it got 100,000 views. It got 5,000 likes, whatever it is. And their brain is like, if I do that, I will get the attention that I need to make my business successful. When instead, it's almost the exact opposite. Yes, having your own style 100% is going to be a huge indicator of if your business is actually successful or not. If you don't have a style and you're kind of just floating in between other people's ideas, because you couldn't sit here and tell me that photographers got into the field to just kind of follow suit, if you will, and copy other artists. I don't think that's why they got into the field at all. I think they got into it to create what they wanted to create, but then the fear of making money.
Would you say sometimes people are invest in the education, but maybe they're investing too much in the wrong type of education?
Oh man. So absolutely. Today in this day and age, there are so many areas of learning. So many. We have YouTube. Like let's not even talk about like the paid ones right now. We have free forms. We have YouTube, Instagram, TikTok. Everybody's doing photography hacks nowadays.
Everyone loves a good hack.
Everybody loves a good hack, and being able to see, these big time photographers throw a hack out there and suddenly that's going to make them successful.
All we gotta do is throw some pantyhose over a lens, and I'm telling you that's the hack.
Pantyhose, I've seen that one.
For my next trick, I'm gonna put a condom on a strobe. We don't need gels anymore. I think I'm lying.
I feel like you're onto a business idea there, like with a condom company.
People won't even need, gels.
They won't, not if you're, and they're stretchy. They will literally fit over any light. So, that sounds like a genius idea.
Yeah.
Are you like planning to hook up with like a condom company to?
We might.
Okay. But no, yeah. So there's tons of information out there to learn. The problem is
it's gonna be called shoot and bang.
Shoot and bang. Seems a little inappropriate considering you don't know me, but that's okay. I like it. I think it's a great idea.
I feel like we're connecting, so
Well, yeah, maybe a little bit. But like I said, I'm married almost 16 years, happily married.
Oh yeah, me too, happily married, yeah.
Anyways, so there's tons of places that you can learn. Tons of places that you can learn. Free, paid. What I found though is it's hard to get a consistent form of learning. So maybe somebody will take a business class and then somebody will take a lighting class and then somebody will take, a marketing class, branding class, but none of it's consistent. And yeah, it's kind of mind-blowing a little bit to see how much these people will invest because someone is so known in the industry maybe, or maybe because their following on social media is really high, whatever the case may be, which those are things that you do want to look at. You don't necessarily want to throw caution to the wind and, take somebody's course who's not actively photographing or not actively working with clients. But at the same time,
just tell the audience you're not just a photographer, you're also an educator.
I am. I do speak and teach. Yes, I speak and teach worldwide. Yeah, I've worked with people all over the world, and
it's kind of a big deal.
Again, with the flattery, I appreciate it, but I don't know if it's going to help you any. But I appreciate it.
Well, we'll see later tonight.
So yes, I do speak and teach. And I love it. I love helping creatives, but again, having a consistent place where they can go to get step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 is just not readily available until artists of the roundtable. And what I know about your platform is that you're breaking it down, helping people understand not only their gear, which I think a lot of people underestimate. I think a lot of people think that that's not necessarily valued or something that they should invest in. When in all actuality, myself, like I said, I've been photographing for years. My own business, I've owned it for almost a decade. And just your first few series, I learned something that I didn't know. And hearing you be able to break down things was amazing. Yeah.
And simple things that make all the difference.
That's the key there, is that a lot of people lose focus of the simpler things. They think that they have to recreate the wheel when in fact they don't. They just need to learn the wheel. And again, back to those free forms, YouTube. You can go on YouTube and find a lighting course, right? You can find how to use off-camera flash, but is it telling you how to use off-camera flash, for XYZ look, or is it just telling you one part of off-camera flash? Again, YouTube can be great, but it can be frustrating trying to find and piece together. Okay, well, I have
puzzle piece. You
have to kind of put it all togetger. And then these, there's conferences.
The whole thing, so
right there's no platform out there that has the entire thing on it, which I'm surprised by, but I'm also not surprised by it because I see how the photography industry and how creatives want to learn. They're artists. They're attracted to the shiny, flashy things. They want to, they have these huge conferences that they can go to that have, the big times that are speaking there. And they want to take this class, and that's going to be the class that changes everything for them. They go to that one class, they go home, and they forget to implement it. And there is nowhere that is forcing people to implement what they learn outside of one conference that makes you take a one-time test. But is that truly enough? Is that enough to help somebody be successful? I don't think that it is. And to be able to have a consistent place of learning, again, a school specifically for photographers, it doesn't exist until you. So you are making big waves and big changes in the industry, and I'm excited to be a part of it.
I'm excited to be part of you. I mean, part of this whole thing.
That's the part of the owner. You're excited to be the CEO, I think is what you mean.
Yeah, a lot of things. All right, next question. So,
What is your next question?
you do underwater photography.
I do. I specialize in underwater portraiture.
That's very different because
Oh yeah,
I'm
well.
sure you get questions about that a lot.
I do get questions about that, and on social media, I get tagged because right now there is a trend of trying to do underwater portraiture in studio, and
Yep. But we got all the Photoshop people do their.
well, now we have AI, and we have all of these, tools that can be of benefit to us. But again, is that going to be what makes us successful? I do not think it is, and that's why I personally have seen so many people fall out of the industry. Is again because they're so focused on the shiny things and learning from somebody who's been in the industry for 20 years or whatever the case may be, instead of focusing on step 1, step 2, step 3, how to build an actual empire. They want to take a brick from here and a brick from there, and it just doesn't work that way. But with my underwater photography, I've always had a connection with water, and it was actually kind of sucky for me because as a kid, I struggled with severe ear infections. They would get so bad. I got one time that I had to be put on severe antibiotics because the infection was headed towards my brain. So I even for showers and bathtub, I had to put earplugs in for the majority of my life. And it wasn't until I had a maternity client that was like, "Hey, have you ever photographed anything underwater?" And I was like, I haven't stuck my head underwater in over a decade, since I was like 9 years old. And my ears have not gotten wet even in the shower because I used earplugs. So I was like, I would love to try to do that. Hardest session, worst images ever, but I was immediately hooked. Because the challenge of it was what I was addicted to, and the water. I love the water. I've always loved the water.
I can imagine you wet.
In the water, yes, I do get wet. That's true. I can get a little slippery sometimes. But outside of that, I loved it. And it also gave me an edge because nobody else was doing that. And while underwater portraiture has been around, the first underwater image that, obviously was taken 100 years, well, let's see, it was 19... I'm not going to get the date right, but either way, it's been around, but actual repetitive, somebody doing these sessions regularly wasn't around when I was doing it. So I don't want to be so bold as to say that I started it, because I didn't, but I certainly created a very large dent in it. I will say that.
Yeah, you don't see a lot of the portrait side of underwater.
You don't. You see a lot of landscape, a lot of animals, scenic. There's a lot of amazing photographers who...
It makes sense.
Oh yeah, but the portrait side of it, and that was just not something that was very well known. Still really isn't, honestly. There's a lot of people who are interested in it. They want to know it, but they're still kind of, doing that, is it worth the investment kind of thing? And the best way for me to explain it, especially when I'm doing like a one-on-one mentorship, is, do you love the water? Do you love the water? And if that answer is, I don't know, then underwater is not for them.
So you say they're probably, again, just playing around,
trying to see, because it's underwater is trying to become a trend, but there's so few people who are doing it at a professional level that it's going to be one of those trends. And then we have movies like, Avatar 2, The World of Water, and then we have The Little Mermaid, and then we have all of these. Everybody wants to be a part of the water, which I love. And I want to encourage that because there's so much that can be done underwater. And I don't believe in competition. I don't believe that we should be competing against one another, that there's more than enough that you can do with underwater, that, if you want to actually learn it and do it well. But yeah, that's absolutely probably, I would say maybe a little bit more of a passion, but I don't know. It's hard to say because I have slowly over the period of my almost a decade of being in the industry have moved not just from, because for the first at least 4 or 5 years of my business, it was maternity work and maternity work only. It was just, that's all my schedule fit. And then once I started making the income that I was making, I was like, you know what? I want to start photographing women. I want to photograph mothers. I refocused on what I was passionate about. I'm always refocusing on what I want to create. And I think it's
very important as artists to know when to continue, because otherwise you'll get burnt out.
Oh, absolutely. I mean,
you'll end up doing the same thing over and over.
You sure will. You sure will. And again, if you're not
your creativity then.
Yeah, and if you're not looking at your pricing, and if pricing is kind of stunted, and that's when you need to really take a hard look at yourself and see, why are you stuck in that same price point? Why are you stuck in going to the same location? Is it because you're burned out? Is it because you're overbooking yourself to try to make money? What is it exactly? And for me, I'm always looking at, how can I be a better artist? How can I provide my clients a better experience? And what exactly do I want to create? What's in my heart for whatever I'm photographing? And I think so many artists lose sight of that.
So you say those are things that lead to success.
Absolutely.
On those things, the client and how you can make it unique for them.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I mean, it's no different. So,
a lot of people just say, anyone can photograph themselves now.
Yes, I hear that a lot. Well, like I said, my social media, which is significant_moments, and then my commission is KB Commissions or the official Karen Bagley on Instagram. I'll get comments all the time where it's like, this is, who would invest that in this? This is stupid. You can pull out your own phone and take a picture of yourself. I get that a lot. I hear it a lot. But the beautiful part about hearing it a lot and then having clients still come to me, again, because, I market and have an experience. The beautiful part about that is that I'm able to show those people who make those comments just how wrong they are. That there is, in fact, an area and a space, and there will always be people who value photographers and what they do. So yes, focusing on the client experience, focusing on making it a very special time, whether it's a woman celebrating her 40th birthday, whether it's a mom whose children just turned teenagers and she wants to document that time, whatever it is, making it unique and special to this moment in their life is what really set my business apart. And because I started implementing that uniqueness in my company years ago. And that's what I started working with clients that were, I actually prefer not to work with celebrities, but they were making money, if not more money than the celebrities. But they weren't on social media. They were now finding me through Google, because throughout this process of me building a business, I realized just how important having an actual website and proper SEO was. That was a huge, huge part of my business. And the only regret that I have when starting my business was that I wish I had invested in proper website building and SEO sooner. It stopped me. What stopped me from building that was the price tag.
But that's, we complain about people not wanting to pay us. So.
I've learned that over the years too. I have absolutely learned that.
Why we got to complain what's going to help us?
Absolutely. So your energy is what's going to attract people to you. If you are one of those people who is always posting and bragging that you got a dress on sale for $10.99, there's nothing wrong with that. Not at all. There's not a single thing wrong with that. But posting that energy out there, then you're going to get that energy back. And I didn't understand that. I did not understand that because I grew up with nothing. And then when my husband and I got married, we were so young, we didn't have a lot to our name, but I didn't know any better. He didn't know any better. We didn't understand the world of finance because what we were taught growing up from, a typical boomer mindset is to pay cash for everything, save, live simply, live as simple as possible. You don't need nice things. Money was almost demonized, to a degree. And I think a lot of people are raised that way. And the minute that you realize that money isn't the problem at all, that's what makes the world go round. The people who have money, who are very wealthy, are some of the most generous people, but they confuse it because they confuse the people who are very, very, very wealthy for being assholes or, jerks and just treating people, really shitty. Pardon my French.
On the movies.
Yeah, because that's how everything is portrayed. But in all actuality, it's the upper middle class who are really difficult to deal with. It's not the extremely wealthy, millionaires that we work with. So, once I started to attract those clientele, and that came from my marketing through Google, and again, having a unique style. Every part to the puzzle had to line up for these clients to want to book with me.
Okay.
And it ended up displaying over the last, I would say 4 years. Over the last 4 years of my business, it ended up just flowing to a degree where I was like, wait a minute, this other client? And that was just through me talking about their life, again, because I'm getting on a personal level with them. And
wealthy people tend to keep their circles pretty small.
They do. So extremely wealthy people keep their circles small. Now, they may have larger parties and may have a lot of people around, but they're close people. You're talking about close family. I mean, Instagram, maybe they have like 200 followers, maybe. And that's it. They keep their lives very, very private for the most part. And so that's why Google was such a key factor there. And again, having a style that stood out from everything else that was being done. And, a lot of people hear that and they tend to be like, man, that sounds really exhausting. Do you ever get tired of always feeling like you have to outdo yourself? And sometimes, yes, sometimes I do have that feeling. But then I realize
competing with yourself, so you're not really competing with anyone else.
That's true. I will never compete with anybody else. I don't want what anybody else has to offer, and they don't want what I have to offer. Truly, they don't. I mean, they don't want it. They may think that they do, but they want to be their own. They want to be their own creative. Again, that's why we got into this field, was to create what we saw from a scene, from a family, from being underwater, the beauty that we saw in the subjects. That's why we got into this field. So, over the years, I've learned how finances actually work. And I think that that's another thing too that just nobody talks about. Nobody talks about how finances truly work for business owners, not only because of how likely we were raised, but also because of how money is demonized by movies. Music doesn't demonize money, I've noticed. It doesn't. In fact, depending on the type of music, chasing money and getting money is what people aspire to do. That's like the next, I have to be a millionaire. I want to be a millionaire. That's what they want to hear. But TV, however, does demonize money. And, a lot of people just automatically paint a picture of people who are wealthy, and that really does more damage than good to any business owner, but especially creatives. So even for myself, when my company when it hit that 6-figure mark, which actually was not that far into my business, I want to say it was my 4th year in that we hit 6 figures net. It wasn't until a year later that we hit 6 figures profit. And the reason that I emphasize that is because a lot of people here become a 6-figure studio, and they fall for that immediately.
No,
and
6 figures can probably only equal 20K if you
exactly, or if you do the math very wrong. Either do the math very right or do it very wrong. And of course, again, this is something that nobody talks about is, when you're a business owner, when you're filing taxes, they tell you, you can deduct, write it off, but at some point in time, you actually have to look like you make money, because if you ever try to go and get a loan, but you've been looking like you've been making, only $20,000 a year for the last 4 years, that's going to come back and hurt you. But again, nobody tells you that. That's not taught. That's not spoken about.
No.
And that's why, again, platforms like Artists in the Roundtable is going to be extremely beneficial for photographers. They need it because nobody is out there teaching this. No one, especially those deeper things.
I agree. Very, very deep things. We like to go deep here.
You do.
Yeah, as far as we can go.
How deep exactly?
6-7 inches at least.
Like my lens, my 11.
Sure, I do know you like it wide. So
I love my wide lens. Yeah, the thick, girth is always going to matter.
Yes, definitely.